The desert stretched endlessly beneath the fading sun, its copper glow spilling across the rocky ridges like spilled fire. A lone rider moved along the horizon, his horse slow, tired, yet steady as if guided by memory more than sight. The cowboy's name was Samuel Clay, a man of few words and many scars, each one earned not in war, but in the quiet battles of the frontier. His hat-brimmed shadowed eyes that had seen too much and trusted too little. Dust clung to his coat, and his breath came out dry as the land itself. He wasn't headed anywhere in particular, just following the whisper of the wind and the quiet pull in his heart that told him he wasn't done with this land yet. He had crossed the border of Apache territory days ago, though he hadn't seen a soul. The canyons here were deep and solemn, their walls echoing the cries of hawks and the restless spirits of the West. Samuel didn't fear the Apache. He respected them more than most white men did. He'd seen enough blood to know when a man deserved peace. The day he met them had been by chance. He was driving a small herd north when he came across a sight that burned into his memory. A young Apache boy, barely 12, pinned beneath his fallen horse, blood soaking the sand. Two bandits stood nearby, laughing, toying with the child as if his pain were sport. Samuel didn't think twice. One shot rang out, then another. The bandits dropped before they even turned their guns. He pulled the boy free, cleaned his wounds, and stayed with him until dawn. The boy's eyes, dark and brave, had looked up at him with something Samuel hadn't seen in years: a trust. He'd brought the boy back to the edge of Apache land, left him near a hunting trail, and rode off before anyone could find him. Samuel wasn't looking for thanks. He didn't believe in debts. A man did what was right because it was right, that was all. But fate, as the desert often proved, has its own way of circling back. Now, months later, Samuel found himself once again riding through the same canyons, though this time, the air felt different and watchful. His horse snorted, uneasy, ears twitching toward the ridges. The cowboy slowed his pace, scanning the shadows. A flicker of movement, a flash of feathers, a glint of steel, and then came the sharp call of an Apache scout. Samuel stopped. He didn't reach for his gun. He knew enough not to. Within minutes, they surrounded him, 5 riders, painted for the hunt, silent as smoke. Their faces were stern, their eyes unreadable. One of them, older and tall with eagle feathers in his hair, rode forward. Samuel recognized him immediately as the Apache chief, known as Iron Bear. His presence carried the weight of centuries. "You ride far into our land, white man," Iron Bear said, his voice deep, not angry, but full of meaning. Samuel tipped his hat, steady and calm. "Didn't mean no harm, chief. Just rode through. Didn't know I was trespassing." Iron Bear studied him, then gestured. From behind the line of warriors, a young man emerged, strong, proud, and familiar. It was the same boy Samuel had once pulled from death's hands. The boy's eyes lit with recognition. He dismounted quickly, crossing the space between them. "Father," he said in Apache, "this is him, the one who saved me." A murmur rippled through the warriors. Iron Bear's expression softened, though only slightly. He nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving Samuel. "You saved my son," he said in halting English. "That is not forgotten." Samuel shifted in the saddle, a little uncomfortable under so many eyes. "Did what any man ought to do," he replied quietly. The chief raised his hand, silencing the whispers. "No," he said firmly, "not every man would. You risked your life for one of us. That makes you different." He turned his horse toward the heart of the canyon. "You will come with us, cowboy. Tonight, you sit at our fire." Samuel hesitated, then nodded. The Apache were not people who invited strangers lightly. He followed as the group rode deeper into the canyon, the cliffs rising around them like walls of red flame. Soon, they entered a wide clearing where the scent of smoke and roasted maize hung in the air. Fires burned low, children ran between the lodges, and women stirred pots while the evening stars began to blink awake overhead. It was a world Samuel had never belonged to, but somehow, as he dismounted and was handed a cup of water by one of the women, it felt strangely like home. The chief watched him from across the fire, the boy seated proudly at his side. Something in Iron Bear's eyes told Samuel that his night was not the end of their story but only the beginning. The fire burned low in the center of the Apache camp, its glow flickering across faces both weary and curious. Samuel sat cross-legged near the flames, his hat resting beside him, the smell of roasted corn and sage filling the air. Around him, the tribe gathered in silence. Some looked at him with suspicion, others with quiet respect. It wasn't every night the white cowboy sat among them without chains or a gun at his side. Chief Iron Bear sat across the fire, his face carved with years of wisdom and pain. The flames danced in his eyes, reflecting both strength and sorrow. For a long while, neither man spoke. The crackle of burning wood filled the space between them until finally, Iron Bear leaned forward, his deep voice carrying through the night air. "My son told me you did not run when he was in danger. You fought men of your own kind to save him. Tell me why?" Samuel took a slow breath. Didn't matter what color he was, Chief. Just mattered he was a boy, and he was hurt. I couldn't ride away from that. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of tone that came from truth rather than pride. The chief studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. "A man who helps without asking, a rare thing in this land." He looked toward the sky, where a thin silver moon hung like a watchful spirit. "You may not understand, cowboy, but among my people, saving a life creates a bond that cannot be broken. A man who saves another becomes part of that soul's story." Samuel shifted, uncertain what to say. He wasn't one for grand talk or promises. He had spent years alone mending fences, tending cattle, watching the sun rise and fall with only the wind for company. The idea that his life could be tied to another's, much less a whole tribe, felt foreign. Yet as he looked around the the faces lit by warmth and trust, he felt something stir in him he hadn't felt in years: belonging. Iron Bear raised his hand, and three figures stepped forward from the shadows as his daughters. They moved gracefully, each carrying a different light of beauty and spirit. The eldest, Sunni, had eyes sharp as flint and stood tall with the poise of a warrior's wife. The middle one, Nah, had a quiet gentleness about her, her smile shy yet full of kindness. And the youngest, Anna, barely past womanhood, carried the spark in her gaze, a curiosity mixed with courage. Iron Bear's deep voice carried over the crackling fire. "These are my daughters. They are the pride of my people. I have seen no man brave enough to protect without seeking reward until tonight." He turned his gaze back to Samuel. "A debt of life cannot remain unpaid. You may choose whichever of my daughters you want. Cowboy, you deserve it." The camp fell into silence so deep that even the fire seemed to still. Samuel stared at the chief, his mind racing. He hadn't expected this, hadn't even dreamed of it. The offer was not one of insult or barter, it was an honor, a gift of trust and kinship. Among the Apache, such words meant more than gold or land. It meant being accepted as one of their own. Samuel's throat tightened. He looked at the daughters, each watching him differently. The eldest, proud and steady, met his gaze without flinching. The middle one lowered her eyes, her hands folded before her. But it was the youngest, Anna, whose look lingered, soft, questioning, and filled with a strange understanding. He lowered his head for a long moment, his fingers tracing the worn brim of his hat. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "The broken bar, I can't accept that. I didn't help your boy for a reward. I just did what any man should have done." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some seemed confused, others impressed. Iron Bear's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in thought. He stood slowly, his shadow tall against the firelight. "Then you are not only brave but humble," he said. "A man who refuses reward proves he is worthy of it." He stepped closer, placing a strong hand on Samuel's shoulder. "You may not take my daughter's hand, cowboy, but you have earned something greater. You have earned my friendship, and the respect of my tribe." The air seemed to shift. The warriors who once eyed Samuel with distrust now nodded in quiet approval. The woman smiled softly. The boy he had saved grinned wide, pride shining in his young face. Samuel rose to his feet, meeting the chief's gaze. For the first time in a long while, he smiled, a tired but real. "That's worth more than any gift, Chief," he said. Iron Bear nodded. "Then tonight, you stay as brother." He turned to his people and raised his voice. "Let the fire burn for our friend. The desert will remember his name." And as the drums began to echo softly through the night, Samuel felt something he hadn't felt in years: a home that wasn't built by wood and nails, but by trust, courage, and a bond sealed in firelight.